wabikora arashimba amasaha yakoze abantu barangana ushaka ko wamenya
kubyaza umusaruro abantu
like 20 minutes. Yeah.
You give me a signal when I should stop? Should we?
We are ready in 3, 2, 1.
I think we are live now. This is really exciting. Welcome everyone to our roundtable today, this afternoon. Since we are live, I not only welcome the people here in the room, but also out there in the world, which is really exciting. Not sure if this is the first live stream the Goethe-Institut ever did, but I think this year it's the first live stream, so it makes me very happy. I will just briefly introduce this event and some people, and then I hand over to our wonderful panel. My name is Nadine Siegert. For those who don't thing I realized when I came to Rwanda in August to replace my colleague was that there's a very striving film scene here, and the filmmakers were actually the ones I was able to meet most during my time here. So this event makes me very happy, and I'm very happy that we have the Swiss Corporation. I'm sure she will still come. And a very warm welcome also goes to the Deputy Director General, Monsieur Jean-Claude Uwilingiyama from the Rwanda Cultural Heritage Academy. I'm sure he will also come. So please, very warm welcome to all of you. Another warm welcome goes to the partners of this event, because it's not only a Goethe-Institut event, we did it together with 4 very dear and strong partners. We did it together with the Film Office of the Rwanda Development Board, together with Teta Ndejuru, the Executive Director of Film, Media and Tourism. We also did it together with our partners from the GIZ. Victor Schüler-Linden is here, who is the component manager for film and tourism at the GIZ. And we also did it together with CINIDB Africa, who is our partner in the live stream. And I would like to express my thanks to Jacqueline Zia and Marc-André Schmachtel, as well as Jan Fritschel for the technical support. CINIDB Africa is a comprehensive database for film professionals, and we are very happy about this cooperation. And thanks to them, we are live out there in the world. And of course, my thanks go to Imitana Productions, Philbert Mbavazi and Sam Ishimwe, who curated this event and who are responsible for what is going to be happening today. And I'm sure it will be great, because we have great panelists and we have a great setup. Thank you so much for doing that with us. Thank you for your trust and your energy and your motivation to do that. Last but not least, I would like to warmly welcome our panelists, who will be introduced more properly later by Sam. So I'm apologizing already now for my mispronunciation of your names. Rwanda names are still very difficult for me. So Kivu Ruhorahoza, sorry, that was not so good, but I tried. Amelia Umuhire, Ganza Moise, and Karekezi. Very warm welcome to all of you, and also to you, Sam, for moderating our panel. So while I'm speaking, more people come, which is great. Please all find your seats. I will just briefly say something about why we do that, and why it is important for us to be here together this afternoon. So I think Kigali is really a city for film. So there are not only important festivals here in that city, but also a number of young Rwandese filmmakers who are successful in international film festivals this year in Locarno, for example, or the Festival of the American Film Institute in Los Angeles. Also this year, 2 short films have been produced, namely Fish Roll and Breaking Grounds by Babu Ganza and by Amelia Umuhire, that have been shown on these festivals and that have been produced in the context of a workshop called Power and Constraints, which is also conceptualized and produced by Imitana Productions, and we are going to do another of these workshops next year. So these films have been, for example, created in the shortest possible time with minimal means, and it shows the great potential of this film scene. And as Gilbert Mbabazi said in the context of this workshop, and I quote him here, we will very much hope that something will develop from this and that we will hear more and more voices from Rwanda in the coming years. And I think that happened already this year because just some of the filmmakers went to the Rwanda Film Lab in Burkina Faso just a month ago, and they came home with awards, such as the Parcours Prize of the Institut Français and the Prix Idrissa Ouadraogo for Imitana Productions and their project Minimals in a Titanic World, but also the Prix Sud Écriture for the project Tears by Ganza Moise and Ishimwe from Kivu Ruhorahoza. So you see, it's like really a lot was happening this year in the film scene, despite and beyond the COVID pandemic. So when we first met in a cafe some weeks ago, I asked them, what would you like to realize? Still have some budget here, and they said, we would really like to put together a roundtable and discuss this, what is also from outside often called the new wave of Rwandan filmmaking, and put also a critical eye on this idea. Is it really new? Is it really a wave? Or how can we understand filmmaking here? So we really want to discuss that today, and we do that with professional filmmakers here in our panel, and we want to see what's really happening in Rwandan film scene today. And then when we can do that as a live stream, and we can send it out to the world even better. So it doesn't only stay in this room here, but it goes out to the world. So very warm welcome to all of you. I'm happy to see a lot of faces here. This discussion will be around 90 minutes. Please take care of yourself, wear your mask as much as possible, keep your social distance, and stay safe and healthy in this room. After the discussion, I would like to warmly invite you for a small reception out here in our courtyard. There will be some snacks and some drinks. Please stay with us for a while and enjoy this afternoon with us. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much, Mehdi, for that introduction, and thanks to the Goethe-Institut and for other partners, CINIDB and IDB and GIZ who helped put this together. So this was really like an interesting thing because I'm not I'm also a filmmaker, part of this thing, so it won't be like questions and answer. Be like conversation is one would have like Kivu's place or Goethe's place. Just just to share what you're going through and to see, to put out what you're going through, what is the challenges, what can be done. Also, to think or to rethink what is this thing everybody's calling a Rwandese New Wave. Is it really a wave, as Nadine said? Is it, so before I talk too much, I want to just read, because Philibert Mbabazi from Imitana, he's the one who curated this talk, and he wrote a small note. Maybe I can read it so that we go into this, get the context of the, of the talk, So he wrote, thinking the Rwandese cinema wave. So a wave, a myth, a creative movement, or just a group of film buffs making films? So many questions. Is it a result of a system that supports cinema production, efficient film trainings, or one rising from established cinema culture? What is certain is that there is an emergence of the Rwandese cinema, and its repercussions has resulted in the coining of the term Rwandese New Wave, certainly from outside. So an increasing number of young, mostly self-taught filmmakers making cinema in Rwanda is a fact. An experimentation of the cinema form and a personal vision are some of its many characteristics. From a profound need of self-expression through images and sound, this emergence is rooted in the do-it-yourself spirit and a pragmatic self-determination which embraces the digital audiovisual possibilities. Reliant on solidarity, the directors/writers are almost always the producers of the films. This is a practical conversation with a close look into what's happening in the Rwandese film scene, the key speakers being active filmmakers of this particular scene. So we will analyze its foundation, its strength, its fragilities and obstacles, and finally its future basically, yeah. So yeah, basically that was the note that Philippe wrote, such that we, yeah. So without going through a lot of things, I just want to introduce you more properly. Not to say that what you did wasn't proper, but more proper. So we have, so we know each other. So Kivu Ruhorahoza, director, film writer, director, cinematographer, and other things. But I will stay on the directing, directing aspect. Karekezi, Amelia Umuhire, and Ganza Moise. Yes. So we will discuss different topics, different talking points about this Rwandese cinema wave, talking from each other's experience, and I will be also myself as a filmmaker sharing my own experiences. And feel free also to ask me a question if you feel like on one talking point we can talk about something. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we all grew up in, or started doing film in this country where there is no, like if you say 15 years ago, there was no film school. Even today, there's no proper film school that we can call, that has a university or anything that teaches film. Also, cinema is a new art form in Rwanda, very specifically. Even if you compare with other African countries, I don't know the exact dates of when the first film was made, first Rwandese film was made, but I don't think it was more than 20 years ago. So it's which means that I remember myself when I was in school, thinking about being a filmmaker, it was like thinking about becoming an astronaut. So it was such a far-fetched idea. But very, very quickly, in the last, let's say, 2 decades, many films emerged from Rwanda, many filmmakers emerged from Rwanda, how they learned how this idea of becoming a filmmaker came to happen. So it's not like music where somebody can pick up a guitar and sing. So there's a whole technical part of it, a whole set of skills that one has to know, an exposure to a cinema one has to have. So I will go around asking you specifically about some of your projects, and this first point will center around how did you put together your skills and knowledge in a country where there is no proper film training, at least in the few years back. So I will start with you, Kivu, since you are the one who did film before we all did. So you did Grey Matter, I think it was shot in 2009, is that right? Yes, so you did that film, and that was 11 years back. From what I recall, I was still in high school, but from what I recall, there was not a lot happening in the film scene from the Rwandese perspective, maybe international productions. So I really want to know, first of all, technically and artistically, how did you educate yourself to put together, first of all, a script of a feature film and collect the necessary technical skills, camera, sound, all these things that has to be put in a film 11 years back? How was that experience for you from the skills and knowledge standpoint?
Thanks, Imitana and all the other partners for inviting me. In 2009, when I shot my first feature, I had already spent about about 3 years making short films and working on TV productions as a fixer or as an assistant in production. But my first, I should maybe talk about my passion, because I wanted to. I knew that I wanted to make films as far back as 1997. So in 1999, when Eric Kabera was producing his first film, 100 Days, I wanted to get hired in the production. They had an office at Milcolin, and I showed up, but I was underage, so they wouldn't even let me meet him. And then I waited an extra 4 or 5 years, and then I got back in touch with him, and I sort of harassed him to hire me as his assistant. So back then there were lots of productions that were coming to make documentaries in Rwanda. There were a lot of productions coming to work in Rwanda, and I was often deployed on those productions to even help carrying cables and back then Eric had an extensive library of books about cinematography, directing, and internet connection was quite expensive. So everything that was to be learned back then was either through his books, because he was the only one who had them, or working on production. And but also I came to film via literature, because I used to read a lot now, not that much. So after years of working as an assistant and as a fixer in TV production, then I started making my own short films with my savings. And then between 2007 and 2009, it was probably the golden age of international TV productions. There was just so much money in it. And then at that time I was a freelance, and I was frankly making good money. So I saved a lot of it to open a cafe and to make a film. So I made my first feature with about 60% of my savings back then, and 40% was a co-production deal with some Australians that I had met in Berlin, at the Berlin Film Festival, actually, when I was attending the talent campus. So but because it was so, the industry was quite in its early years, so there was no tripod, no batteries, no cable, nothing. There's absolutely no accessories. Everything we needed, we had to go to Kampala, replacing a piece. When we missed a screw, we had to go to Kampala or Nairobi. So it was very expensive to make the first film, but that production coincided with the release of the first Red camera, which was the first powerful digital cinema camera that could deliver the same results as a traditional ARRI film camera. So I quickly embraced the technology, and I made a clear effort to stay up to date with technology, so that the future would be in the future I would be less reliant on systems that were quite limiting to me. So it was so my path was quite it was quite different. Yeah.
So from what I'm understanding is like you got the technical skills or the knowledge about cinema to make a film, how to make a film, how do you write a script, how do you make visual decisions, how do you really frame scenes and all that stuff, like very detailed stuff. So most of it you really got it from, first of all, from literature, and also from Rwanda Cinema Center, where you were hanging around and reading books, informing yourself.
Yes, and but also, I mean, cinema being a sort of like a meeting point of many art forms. I grew up reading a lot of comic books, so which is more or less a storyboard. And but also in the mid 2000s, we were having easier access to cable TV. I mean having Canal Plus and TV5 Monde via TV10, and and then every time I traveled to show my short films, I took that opportunity to absorb as much visual art as I could to museums and film festivals, watching 7 films a day, and then downloading loads of films because the internet connection is obviously better in the West. Downloading lots of films illegally and then bringing them back here to watch them and share them with you. I remember sharing lots of those films with you guys. And yeah, so it was a lot of self-education, but also lots of earlier input from my own cultural consumptions and me kind of taking advantage of the major technological shifts that were happening in the camera departments, but also with access to internet.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I will jump quickly to Amelia, and yes, so as someone who lives also between Rwanda and Europe, and you made the film Mugabo. Was it 2014? 2014 was shot. Yeah. Shot in 2014. You can take the microphone. Yes,
it was shot in
2014, right? So I just wanted to know, it was your first short film, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, because I know you also made a web series, Polyglot.
Mm-hmm.
Was it after, or was it?
So I shot Mugabo in 2014, but then I didn't edit it until 2016. And in between, I made the web series.
Yes.
And then I went back to it like in 2016.
All right,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, a web series that was shot in Berlin. Yes, I want to come really on the shooting experience, basically, that you did in 2014 as someone who also is not based here all the time. How was it for you? What made you, first of all, make you say, I want to go and make a film in Kigali with a crew that is from Kigali? And how was that experience from finding the right collaborators technically, and actors, camera person, sound person, production side? How was the experience of coming here and making a film from the collaboration side? You know, for the finding the right collaborators. How was it? How was the experience of the shoot?
Okay, so I'll start with why I shot it here. So like in 2013, I had come for an internship, and then I kind of met all of you guys and was quite inspired because it was also like my first introduction to Rwandese filmmakers. And so I kind of got the idea that, okay, actually there's a scene and there's a possibility of making films here. And so in 2014, I came back, and then I reached out to Kivu, and he gave me a list of like, of technicians and people that I could work with. So I went to like the usual safari for sound, and like it was at that time it was a bit more difficult to find camera people. There weren't that many people, and also like I ended up working with someone else that I didn't have in mind before. And well, the experience was very, I mean, like all my first films, we all shot them on a 5D. And it was kind of always a very small team, self-financed, very cheap kind of filmmaking. But yeah, so it was very much like using a network that, you know, the people that I had met a year before. And also because it's quite small, it's also quite easy to find collaborators quick and to kind of organize a shoot. So we shot Mugabo in 2 days, because we didn't have I didn't have more money. So it had to be done in 2 days. And yeah, so it was a pretty small, very, very small production. And yeah.
So would you say that, because you came in 2013, then 2014, you came in 2013, you saw there was something happening. Would you say that this coming and meeting like an active film scene in Rwanda, active upcoming films in Rwanda, you say that really sparked or precipitated you into really embracing this career of becoming a filmmaker?
Yes, absolutely. Because like the year before, I was doing an internship at the film festival, at the Rwanda Film Festival, and also working for the Goethe-Institut. And then I kind of like was running into a lot of people who were doing films. And then there was like the big workshop, the Maisha Film Lab was going on. And So I was kind of just like it was like I was itching to get on the other side of it, because I was like, okay, maybe I could actually do films as well. I don't have to be in the cultural sectors, like, on the planning side of things, but I could actually also make my own films. And also like just seeing that, because like films are quite expensive to make, and then it's also very mystified as well. The whole filmmaking process is it seems like something that's unattainable when you're looking at it from outside, So it was very demystifying to see other people making films. Yes. And then, so it really, I don't think I would have made films if I hadn't had that kind of exposure a year before.
Oh, very nice. So I want to ask another question, which in regards to what I asked Kivu before about, because we all study like self-taught making films. And I want to know for you, from your own experience as a self-taught filmmaker, and who did the films? You came in 2014, you shot a film here, and you also went back in Berlin. You shot a web series that was also with a small crew. How would you compare the working environment, of coming of like, because I think it was in both guerrilla style setup. How was it if you compare, like, to see working in an independent environment here and in Berlin?
Well, like equipment-wise, there wasn't that big of a difference. Again, it was a 5D and a small production as well. Lots of friends and family, and nothing like, I've never asked for a shooting permit. I've never gone through like the administration of shooting a film. It was always like a guerrilla thing of just picking up the camera, organizing a crew, and then shooting. So it was quite similar actually from the experience. It was always kind of using what's there. We always used the locations, like our own apartments, our house, whatever. Like it was always kind of using what's there, and not really the what I then learned is like the real film production, whatever. Yes. Yeah.
So you say that also coming from making a film in Rwanda from a guerrilla style, as you say, like, was that an input that helped you also in Berlin, like in how to manage a small crew, how to manage, how to, débrouiller, yeah. How to, DIY. So how would you say that from here and there?
Yes, for sure. Because it also it took away the fear, the feeling of not being up to it, like not being, able to do it. So once I did it here, which was from my standpoint a much more difficult thing to organize, yes, than doing it, because I had to organize it before I came back and stuff. So it was logistically, it was more difficult to organize a shoot here than to do it in Berlin. So once I was there, I was like, okay, I've done it before, so now I can definitely do it again, So it took away that kind of like fear of not being able to do it.
Okay, so one quick question before I also go to Joel and Ganza. So also from you, how did you were inspired to become a filmmaker, but how did you educate yourself? How did you get, the knowledge, the skills to do this?
Well, I think every self-taught artist or whatever, like it comes from a necessity. So you want to do something, but you don't know how. So you kind of just go and Google how to do it. And then if you stumble upon a good tutorial, you kind of, I really like everything I learned through YouTube tutorials or hour-long interviews with other directors and stuff like that. So it was like the internet basically, so. Yeah.
Big shout out to the internet. It really saved our lives. So I'll go to you, Joel. So Joel Karekezi, yes, very interesting. Very interesting, because I remember when we met with Joel, it was actually the very first workshop that I did was your workshop, with Philibert. I think one of the very earliest workshops we did is one of the workshops you organized, but we'll come to that later. So I want just to ask you about, you did a short film called Imbabazi and The Pardon, and you also did a feature film. And recently you also, or not very recent, but you also had your last feature film called Mercy of the Jungle. So all these three films have one thing in common, very interesting. They were all shot in Uganda. So how did that happen? Because I know that you have even in your first you had some crew from Rwanda, some people from Rwanda who helps you, if I'm not wrong. But how does that come that you make all your films in Uganda? Yeah.
So, thank you. The good news is the next one will be shot here in Rwanda.
Thank God.
So get ready. So the reason
the question was also because I know I also want to come also to Maisha as well, because we come to those initiatives too.
Yeah. So for my first short film, I did a workshop with Maisha in 2009, and then my short script was selected, and then we had to shoot the film in Uganda. So that's a production decision. It was not me, it's Maisha. But I was happy to make that short film because it helped me to understand deeply cinema, because I learned cinema through internet, directing. I just found this website, Cinecool in Canada, where I had really to pay and learn autodidact. But so through that journey, I had really to teach myself, because so many things in cinema, I had to really try to do research, internet. And then my first feature, I had to produce it through a grant I received on development. At that time, I just, it was for writing the script. But at that time, the script was ready. And for me, I wanted to make the movie. And then the team I had in touch was the people we shot together the short film.
During the Maisha Film Lab, right?
Yeah, during the Maisha
so
Film
for those who don't know, it's an initiative that organizes workshop across East Africa.
East Africa,
yes.
Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Kenya. So because the budget was very small, and then for me, my plan was to make the movie, so I had to convince all my friends. We had to work on this project, no payment for everyone. So the first contact I had, there are those people who worked with me on my short film. So we had to shoot in Uganda. At that time, it was not easy because even the equipment, I remember we had to go to negotiate just like a Canon 5D. I remember the person who had it was charging us almost $200 every day, which was going to...
For a 5D?
Yeah, for 5D. So we shot the film with another small camera, Sony Nex VG10. But I was really happy to produce and direct and write this project, even if it was low budget. But the result with, touring with the festivals, it also helped me. It was a journey that helped me to learn a lot in all departments, distribution, producing, writing, but also networking, because all those networks are really necessary to be able to make a movie. But at that period, I was also preparing my next feature film, The Mercy of the Jungle. But because of the experience I went through with the Imbabazi, the pardon, with no money, no fund, for The Mercy of the Jungle, my artistic ambition, I knew it will oblige me to do whatever it takes, but to search for funding.
We'll get to the international cooperation part 2.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you also, so that you say that your first people who helped you are people who you met through these kind of workshops, and therefore, because in Babazi, the feature film was shot in 2011.
It was released in 2013.
Yes. So in 2011, so these people you met in the workshops, and they were your only people to rely on to, hence the decision to go make the film where you have the crew and you have the people, even though the story was supposed to.
The story was Rwandese, but for me, to make a movie, you have to have a crew, a people you have to rely on. That's why for me to be able to make it, I had really to contact all the people I knew at that time. Which brings me also on The Mercy of the Jungle. This was a co-production. There's Rwanda, France, Belgium. And then at the beginning, we were planning to shoot in South Africa. because there is a tax rebate, there is a tax shelter. It's business. So we had to negotiate, and then at that moment, me and my producer, we had to decide to shoot again in Uganda. Again, it was the production decision because it was cheaper for us with the network I had already. And then, here in Rwanda, now I'm happy at this moment, there is now an institution in charge of cinema where you can really contact and reach, and they can help you to meet the right person, because a movie like The Master of the Jungle, it's a movie that really needed me to, for example, I needed to have guns in the movie. I'm a uniform, so I had really to think. I don't have contacts, so I had to search all over. If we were supposed to shoot in South Africa, it was going to be easy because it's the industry, it's well organized. So then I had to really do my network all over East Africa. But now I think now I can really, that's why my next feature, I have to shoot it here in Rwanda, because I know I will go direct to Rwanda Film Office, tell them, yeah, here is the script I want to shoot, put me in touch with the right person. But back at that time, everyone had really to hustle, to do on his own. Yeah,
that's very interesting. Also, we'll come back on that about what kind of facilities we need to facilitate. As you're talking about having these kind of special props, guns, or other kinds of things, like all kind of other, infrastructures are needed too. But we come back to that when we get more into the production part. So Ganza Moise, yes, I want to ask you, because it's very interesting that you are from a production company, Kivu Films, which is more of a collective, and I really find it very inspiring, because I know you guys, how you work, you live together, you eat together, you drink together, all kinds of things together. So, and for me, it's very interesting that this kind of movement of people working together, really having the same goal, sharing everything and collaborating and sharing, being in solidarity. So I really wanted to know, for you to tell us about yourself, about how you got in touch with cinema, but also like in direction of how did you come to form this collective with Remy and Shemadev. And I know that you have as Mutiga, and is also close to you, your brother Ngabo, who was in Locarno, and many others. So I want to know how you came to create this collective together, and how do you operate?
Yeah, thank you. I came to film in 2015 after spending a year as an actor in a feature film that was never released. But yeah, I was hoping to make comic books. I had started writing out in high school small stories and stuff, and somehow I ended up towards cinema because it was the most possible. It was the most possible thing to do, because there weren't many contacts I had in the publishing industry, and it kind of, I found myself more into cinema. I had friends who were there's this competition called Global Dialogues. They would like apply to competitions. They would apply to competitions, and they kind of won, and had won like a small camera and some small equipments. So yeah, after acting in that film, I found myself with tutorials that I had borrowed from the friends who were making the film, and softwares to write scripts. So I started writing my first script in 2015, and reached out to a few friends I had made in high school who were, finding their way into cinema. And then while I was slowly making my first short film, I heard about the first workshop that you guys organized.
The Maisha Film Festival.
No. Mashariki.
Mashariki.
Yes, that.
Mashariki.
That
close.
Joel was the mentor, of course.
Yes.
And so I applied and got selected, and this is how I started getting into this network where you meet people who have been into making films way before you do, and of course you're on the side, you're making your film, but you're also getting this knowledge because I had downloaded tutorials. I was looking for knowledge, but it's very different when someone is sharing a very personal experience and they're saying what you think you know or you know, but it's very different at the same time. Like you have tutorials, but workshops they have a different practical element they give you. So throughout that year, I attended different workshops, Maisha Film Lab as well, where we met with different people who were participants, and from then on, it's like we started this thing where we all had scripts, because to enter you had to have a script and you had to work on it for a whole week, and obviously only one person is the winner, but you end up with all these projects that are not made. But we are now 10 to 15 people who have projects and they really want to make them. So that's how we started helping each other. Some Mutiganda had a little bit more connections with where he was working, and so that's how we started. We made Shema's film, and everyone, like throughout that year, it's like almost we were 15, but almost 8 of the participants shot their first film throughout that year. So that's how we kind of started. And later on, in 2016, when I was when I had 2 short films, the one that was made throughout the workshop in Mashariki and the one that I'd been making slowly on my own. And when they were projected, that's where I met Remy. He was really interested in my films, and obviously I had met him before and on Filbert's set. Sorry, I'm going back and forth, but yeah. We met all of us throughout productions, helping each other. I'm your assistant director. You're gonna be my cinematographer. So that's how we started slowly. And by 2018, I had worked with Remy on various short films, including Torment by Nyirinkwaya and others. And we kind of found similarities on how we work. He would borrow gear from me, and I would borrow gear from him. And same thing with Mutiganda and Shema. We found ourselves like, you spend a lot of nights speaking about cinema and what you want to do, the dreams you have, the projects you have. Every time you have a project, you send the script. They give you their feedback. You slowly work, and that's how this synergy, if I may, started. So we later had a huge need to watch films, because everybody was watching films on their own to educate themselves. But then you meet, you share the films, you talk about the films, and so slowly it became clear that we work better together. And so instead of having my own production company, Shema's own production company, Remy's own production company, we thought it would be better to have a company together that produces films. Of course, it's 3 different voices with styles that are somehow different and approaches that are different, but when we come together, everybody helps each other, and we make better films, better products. But also on the side, other than us, Kiruri MFN, we were this circle of friends and filmmakers and film buffs who obviously were making films together, but watching films together. So that's how we kind of wanted to start a collective, something where we were technically doing it, but we hadn't given it a name and officialize it and do it consciously. Also, Sandra was also involved. So we thought maybe we should start a thing where we challenge each other and we share inspirations or just connections. Something you know, maybe you don't have a short film now, but you know someone a curator maybe who needs a short film, and you know so and so has a short film. So it's like that's where we started the collective 250 film experiment. And it's just we realized that we are all of us, not just 3 or 4 of us, we are all on a path where we want to appropriate cinema to ourselves. Like, You want to have like, this is some cinema, and this is his voice, this is how his film are. And in that journey, we found that we are experimenting a lot on the form to find what makes sense for us. So yeah, and also it's kind of lonely trying to make films in a place where it's pas évident. So you find that the people who are around you are like a shield to make you feel that what you're doing is real, is actually, I mean, it's something. Yeah, so that's how we made that collective. And yeah, I mean,
Yes.
you all know you're kind of.
And you guys, I know that you have a house, you live together,
Okay.
you eat together. That's also an interesting way of collaborating.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was not viable. Ntabwo byari biri, how can I say? It didn't make sense to rent an office in town and rent another house where you live, because it's not like architecture, the work you make, you can, when we're thinking about films, we are working, when we're discussing our projects and challenging each other, we are working as well. So it made sense, obviously with the pandemic as well, to like match, to find a place that suits our working process. Because we don't have regular hours, like people work 9 to 5s, like any time could be work time. And so yeah, it kind of helps. But also because we every time you're thinking of an idea, you're always with your friend who is a filmmaker, they challenge you, you're always talking about film. So to us, it became clear that we are technically working, even though we're not charging ourselves, or we're not paying ourselves for that work, just talking and growing the ideas and the approaches and the network as well. So yeah, it made sense to kind of
be under the same roof.
Yes.
It's great. Yes. So I want to go to a second point, and this is also one of the main reason what we're thinking about here. So they think people like to talk about a wave. It's a cool word to use, a wave and everything. And the Rwandese cinema, of course, but sometimes these things are conflicting to say Rwandese cinema, Burundian cinema, Ugandan cinema. So my question here, for example, if you talk about the French New Wave, for example, it's a wave with an identity. There's a stylistic identity to it. There is a thematic identity to it. If you watch French New Wave films, they have something in common, stylistically or thematically, or even the Iranian second New Wave, where you have people having some similarities in the way their films are done, some in the poetry, in how they're exploring the everyday life in Iran, the mundane, all these things. So my question here is something I really want everyone will have talk about it, how you think about it. So when people say the Rwandese New Wave or Rwandese cinema, my question is, does the Rwandese cinema really have an identity? For sure, it has an identity because there's a Rwandese. But what is that identity? Is it in the style? Let's say, is there a thing that makes Rwandese filmmakers have something in somehow how they make their films, like in the French New Wave, or is it in the thematics also? Filmmakers, people who are thinking about, because they're living the same, grew up, coming up from almost same environment. So what is for you, each one of you go around, what is for you the identity of the Rwandese cinema, if there is one?
I don't think there's an identity of the Rwandan cinema scene, because the process has been demystified, as Amelia said, and the access to equipment has been much easier. So there are so many sub-scenes creating different types of films, and those creative scenes on their own. I mean, are kind of fed by different types of energies, and so the Rwandan cinema scene is as diversified as any other scene. It's the same way people talk about American cinema. There's not such a thing as American cinema, because New York alone has over 20 types of like cinemas, like the LGBT underground cinema, the rich Manhattan kind of comedy scenes, and the Brooklyn black auteurs. So the same thing could be said about the Rwandan cinema, because. And I'll go back to this wave, because I think it's a fantasy of some Western programmers or cultural commentators. I don't think there's such a thing as a Rwandan wave, because no, not necessarily. I'll tell you why. Because a wave comes from a same creative source. It could be maybe 3 schools that kind of work on a curriculum, or it could be originating from a new policy that makes it possible for filmmakers to work in certain kind of conditions, or it could be one influential figure who sort of single-handedly inspire an entire scene. But that's not the case. I don't think it's the case with Rwanda, and we have seen there could be maybe a wave coming from the school ADMA, or there could be a wave coming from the first successful web series here, the one with Njuga, and the one that was the launching pad for Gracien. There's the first one, Friends, in Shuti, which really kind of inspired an entire kind of like an entire group of filmmakers who are all trying to emulate that TV series. But when it comes to cinema, I don't like saying cinema because it makes it sound so self-important. But when it comes to cinema, this wave that people talk about, in my opinion, is it's a collect. It's an amalgamation of energies and personal hustles, because we don't have anything like a manifesto. Thematically, it's very diversified. The way we get our films made, our personal approaches. It's really not a wave.
To bounce on that, on the thematics, for example, like most of us, I think me, you, Karekezi, and Amelia, maybe Ganza, I don't think so, but we made very personal films for sure, but which of course reflect somehow in one way or another. For example, the history of the country, the genocide, the history of the genocide. Not that I'm not going to say to sound like people who say my film is about genocide, because it's not the case. Not at all, and but it's a recurring theme, not about, but also about the trauma or about how people deal with it. So my question is, maybe don't you think that thematically there is something that people, especially with first films, like I think it's a pattern that I noticed with first films. Don't you think maybe it's maybe Amelia, you can bounce on that probably about if you want to. Yes.
Yeah. Also, most waves tend to be in reaction to a status quo or a mainstream that exists, and we don't have any of that. So our energies and our need to make films were not in reaction to, for example, the national TV dominating the scene and doing something that was displeasing us. No, it was So I wanted to add that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you want to bounce about that, about the themes, the thematics of most of the first,
but also I think just the wave thing, because I agree that it's also it's more a thing that was invented by the way Rwandese films have been perceived on the festival circuit, and the fact also that Rwanda is a small country. So if you have 5 films coming from it, it's going to be like a whole, people are going to be kind of surprised that films are coming from a country like this and films that are kind of participating in good festivals. So I think a lot of it is also just coming from the so like thematically, I think it's also because it's kind of inevitable as well that like because I do think there was something to which people react in their first work, which is also why I think like all of our first films were kind of dealing with the history of Rwanda and the history of the genocide, or like how it affects some of the characters in the films, So I think it's also like that is a reaction to, I mean, I don't know, because I don't know what would have happened if other films wouldn't exist that kind of dealt with that history from a very westernized point of view. So I think the fact that these other films existed kind of leads to the first works coming as a or stuff like that, So it's kind of, I think it's just a natural thing that people would use one of the biggest historical events as an inspiration for their work,
Joel, if you want to talk about the if you want to talk about the wave or not.
Um, yeah, I agree with what Kivu and Amelia said. And for me, in the last 10 years, uh, up to now, I realized that, there are so many things happen here in the Rwandese cinema. And then the force of Rwandese filmmaker is they are really like how they share. They're like they're teamwork. If I know a little, um, I can share to others. That's why in the last 10 years, so many workshops just happen through Goethe-Institut, Maisha, some independent workshop by Kivu, another filmmaker. But all those workshops helped a lot the cinema scene, where at this moment in each festival around the world, you can see, you always find a Rwandese filmmaker who has a project. That's why, that's what is really special here in Rwanda. In other countries, yeah, some of them, they're really organized, they have funds, but what they miss is that people who are ready to fight and share what they have, their skills, create a company without the means, and work together. So that's what we have now. That's what we have here in Rwanda. That really contributed a lot in really pushing this cinema scene on a level where people see, yeah, things are happening in Rwanda. So, and then thematically, for me, always love to watch Kivu movies because it's really challenged me. It's drive me in another in his vision, and then also on my side, I have really to create another theme. What comes in my mind, Amelia, Ganza, and then yeah, the wave. autodidact filmmaker just fighting every single day to really tell their story. And then when they reach the worldwide market, they really prove that they are really capable. So that's really drive this cinema industry. If you really look closely, we see that's really, it's all these individuals trying to work together. That's the force we have.
Ganza, if you want to talk about the wave.
The wave. I don't know if it's new or old, but I think what they said, I agree. First, the fact that it's inevitable. We are kind of a small a country and not so far in ages. Like the generation is almost near the same, so we might have different experience the same thing in the history, like experience the same thing differently, but you'll find that the way she said, it's inevitable, that if you want to pull from your own reality, you'll find that thematically maybe there are some things that might click, but again, we're very different individuals who have very different backgrounds, who are fed by very different forms of art, so the approach will be very different. So to me, I think it all comes back to who is watching. Like if a person is in this festival programming and they see this kind of films, they'll try to connect dots, and they'll ask like, why do Rwandan filmmakers make films about death or about dark themes? Why is it so sad? Why is there always have to be melancholy? Is there like they have watched maybe 3 or 4 or 5 films and it seems like narrowing it down. So to me, yeah, what Joel says is people reacting to what's happening, and they only have a frame of reference, the films they have watched or programmed. So I don't know if it's a wave, but it's something that's happening. There is something that's happening.
Okay, so yeah, I'm looking at my clock. It's running so super fast. I'd love to go more in details, in really mostly into the artistic inspirations of everyone. How do you come to do this work and that work? But unfortunately, the time is running so fast, and there's other things I also want to talk about, especially on the practical level of things, on the funding things, on the access to infrastructure things, because the cinema, unfortunately, can be an expensive art form, even though technology is, of course, making everything easier, but still, cinema is a quite expensive art form. So I want to talk about the funding, the money. I want to talk about the money because we need it for sure. Yeah. So my question is, we all did films that are self-funded for a while, and on this point, I want to talk in two parts, because I know Joel, you did your last film, Mercy of the Jungle, in a co-production with Belgium and France and Rwanda. Is that right? Yes, and. Even though the first film you did, you were completely almost self-funded. And Kivu, you made 2 films self-funded, Grey Matter, and I worked on them. No, don't give me the and the last one, Things of the MS Wanderer. This one is one I'm sure because I worked on it. Grey Matter, you said it. I want to know about, and me, I'm developing a feature. I haven't done a feature film yet. I'm developing one. I know Ganza is developing a feature film too, and Amelia developing a feature film. We're all trying to make feature films, which is a different reality, obviously, than doing a short film. And this idea of guerrilla, of self-funding, of doing everything by yourself, asking friends, selling something. How is this sustainable? If we talk about if we're talking about the Rwandese cinema and the many people doing films, how is this concept of making films by finding the means, everything by yourself, is this thing going to keep going on for 10 years or 20 years from now? So can the cinema survive, Rwandese cinema survive without a proper funding system in place? So I want first to ask, I'll start maybe by Amelia and Ganza from the, because you did short films that are self-funded, and now you are working on making your first feature films, and so how are you seeing this? How are you? Is it what you did on the short films? Is it something that is doable now on a feature film, or even if you do it the first time, is it something that you can do 2 times, 3 times? How is it for for the next step of making a feature film?
Yes, I made short films that are self-funded, and we co-produced a feature film that is that I co-directed with Remy, that is still in production from 2018. Well, it's in early post-production now. So I would say it's envisageable to keep making shorts in that manner. Features, it will depend on, like, you are limited in the production value and the kind of stories you would tell and how you would tell them if you keep going on this way. That means we'll keep making very minimalistic films. So I don't know, it feels like maybe there is an ambition to sometime later, maybe, as you say, 10, 20 years, to maybe do a not so minimalistic film. But if it continues, if it continues without a proper funding system, I don't know, maybe we'll find crews of younger people who are ready to work for less. Because what happens is you have a crew and friends, you keep working, but as time comes, some will get married or have other life
happens.
Life happens, as you will. So you'll find that you cannot keep not paying the people who are so passionate that you're working with. So there's that necessity of maybe entering the system of international co-production, just so or finding other ways to not keep making your films for free with the same people who now are having more and more responsibilities. So it is hard to assess, but I would say if we continue like this in 10, 20 years, you would have to need new people who have that fresh blood, or make minimalistic films until God knows when.
Yeah, I don't think it's very sustainable the way it is right now, because usually if you come from a country with let's say like a good state funding of films, you make a few short films, if they go to internationally acclaimed festivals, it's likely that you will kind of get into the
good consequences that happen.
Yeah, you will get to make a feature film at some point. But I think like it's quite frustrating, to be honest, like, because when you come from, especially if you come from like a guerrilla kind of approach, where if you go from writing to planning the shoot to shooting, and then you do the editing and it's done, and then but now, like, when you enter the feature film process, it's a whole different pace. It's very, very slow. You have to go through like a lot of labs, a lot of writing, a lot of getting selected, it's a lot of work that kind of distracts from the actual work that you should be doing as a filmmaker, like making a film or preparing to make a film. And then you find yourself just becoming like just moving from one workshop to another, and kind of like hoping that someone will see the value of your film. And then, you get like little funding for the development or whatever, but it's never like, it's not really sustainable. And I think like if it can be very discouraging as well, especially like, as you said, like life happens. Maybe someone can't afford to be like hustling around for 10 years, So I think like the model that is the most sustainable now, I think, is always like to always be a producer on your own film, because if you wait for the thing to happen and so for someone to pick you up and give you the money for your film, it's never going to happen, you know? So I think it's quite frustrating, honestly.
So
and
you mean like we need to do more politics stuff, like these labs that you don't necessarily need. That's for someone, for example, who's in a country where there is a proper funding system. If you did something that happened, it will be. So you say that we lose more time.
Yeah, you lose time and you lose like the courage and and
patience.
Yes, and it's kind of, you know, it's a creative and a very vulnerable process as well. And if you go, let's say, through like 10 labs where you've got like different people examining your script before you even feel that it's ripe to share, but you have to go through these labs because that's what's work while you're developing a film, you know? I don't know. I don't think it's a very sustainable model, but if you had like a good, consistent funding that is kind of merit-based and not like, you know, network-based or contact-based, then you could actually have filmmakers work instead of going around hustling and doing their own promotion for projects, which is essentially what we're all doing when we go through all these labs. You know, you're just promoting yourself and doing like a lot of PR, but you're not really writing, you're not really, you know, so I don't know. I find the whole feature film process is very strange.
Yeah, just to add on that, because, for example, like we know if somebody from a country with good funding, if he wins an award in a good festival like most of us did here, there's direct income for that. Like, let's help you make a feature film where he's here. Yeah. It doesn't have any materialization. Yeah. So okay. So Kivu and Karekezi, you have managed to make feature films already, more than one feature films. So, but differently, at least for the last films. So I want to start with you, Kivu, because you, as you said before, you funded by at least 60% your first feature film, Grey Matter, and the second one, you also funded it, and so all the feature films you have made so far, not all the, I'm excluding Europa because you haven't seen it here yet. Here, yeah. But so I will ask you the same question. How do you see this model that you adopted, you know, of self-funding the feature films? Is it something you would keep doing if you had no other choice? Is this something that you could really keep on doing for the next 10, 15 years? And what are the challenges really of putting out of your pocket money into a film?
Yes, I would be very happy to invest in my own work because it's first of all, it's my work. And I want to retain as much artistic freedom as I can in the creative process, because every funding agency has an agenda. It's as simple as that. Even if it's a national film agency, even if the Rwanda Film Office creates a film fund, they're going to have their eligibility criteria. They're going to have things that they feel that are urgent for them to fund. So so it's very normal that film funds would have an agenda. And if I don't want to have to deal with those kind of agendas, and if I can afford to, which I am fortunate to be able to at this moment in my career, then I'm very happy to continue working sometimes in the corporate world, and then using my own royalties or using my screening fees that I get left and right, my consultancies, and reinvesting in my work because it's my work. And I don't expect anybody else to put their money in my work if I live in an environment that doesn't make it possible for me to go and knock on certain doors and get money. So is it sustainable? Financially, yes, because I love belonging in the middle class. So I'm not going to push myself into into poverty by making films. But, yeah, so it's sustainable, but again, sustainability is very different depending on the system. So in France, for example, you can make 10 films that lose money. Awfully, as in a film that's made for 2 million, making 50,000 at the box office, and still be able to make films. So it's still sustainable, but it's not financially profitable. Yeah. So the sustainability that we need to invent for ourselves has to maybe try to balance those two necessities. Films as cultural products that we need to push our people to own and to create, but also films as viable economic entities that have their own legal personalities, and that can make money for those who create them, so that the system can keep funding itself. So the way I made my first film, it was 60. I put in 60,000 of the actual cash that we needed, but the rest of the co-production deal was worth almost $120,000, which is money that I was going to spend anyway. And then post-production was also quite expensive, and I got a deal on that. And then with my second film, because the second film that I wanted to make was going to be produced in France, and I spent almost 2.5 years going through the process that Amelia described of labs and having these people called script doctors, as if your script is terminally ill. And then they come, and then their job is to denature and to invite themselves in your imaginary world, and then pretend that the dramaturgical laws are the same everywhere. It's like, no, this character for Nyamugari cannot react like this. It's like, well, have you ever been to Nyamugari? Do you know how people from Nyamugari react? And so this system, if it doesn't work for you, and if you have other ways to keep your voice and to make your films, and if you live in an environment that requires you to be creative in your funding process, which is going to be the case for my next film, sometimes it's you get money from the private sector, you get money from private equity, you get a little bit from your own savings, you work with the artistic solidarity that you've been trying to develop in the scene, because that's where our industry is at the moment. It requires lots of lobbying so that policies can be written, and it requires lots of artistic solidarity, and a little bit of being economically realistic, and knowing that if you're making a film and if you're paying people 200,000 a week, it's actually the salary of the head of a department at the Umujyi wa Kigali. So it's not nothing. And it's possible to make films and paying people and not having to exploit them, and then make decent products and take advantage of the technology. And and there are many ways, new ways of selling the films, and selling them over a long period of time to make them also profitable.
So one question is that, for example, you're saying that for this to be sustainable, one has to also. I asked him two questions. So if I understood, where you say you can use other means of income, which are not necessarily related to cinema, to fund, to put money, to invest in your own work. So but my question is,
Yeah. I'm shooting a commercial for Rwanda. It's still images, and it's still storytelling.
It's connected.
Yeah.
Yes. So my question is, does these films, making a film is a work one can invest in, but how is it rentable, or like how does it get the money at least back that you invest in, so that you can keep doing it 2, 3, 4 times?
The actual films.
Yes.
So the let's take a few models, for example, by which, again, that's where the experience comes in handy. You can make a film, for example, and then you can heavily lobby the educational distribution channels of the world. Say, for example, North America. If you get a distributor who has experience of selling films to universities, and then if you negotiate with them to show the film at 100 universities, and then you can negotiate anywhere from, I don't know, $300 to $1,000 per screening. So that's good money. And then, of course, you share it with them, and then you pay taxes, or some get lost in publicity. But that's one possible way of selling films to and making a good income from it. But also, like Karekezi has sold films to TV5 Monde or to Canal+, or to even obscure TV channels from Poland and Sri Lanka. And the thing is, if you can do it yourself, but usually it should be done by sales agents. They're dedicated sales agents whose job is to champion the films that they represent. And we don't have them in Rwanda at the moment, so sometimes it has to be done by the producer. But for the past 10 years, many Rwandan film professionals have gone to film festivals that have a side component, which is a market, and where distributors meet, buyers meet people who have products, and then there's for people who do web series, because I wish we had them here as well. They are making money from YouTube. And then in between films, in between large projects that are cinema, there's a lot of work that happens in the audiovisual sector, and it also helps us to hone our skills, because spending 5 years trying to raise money to make a film, while you are talking and pitching, and then being frustrated with your script doctors, I think it's a healthy thing to go out there also and work on projects that we tend to judge as smaller in scope or in ambition.
Yes, time is flying. Huh? So I want to, Joel, to talk about Mercy of the Jungle. So this is a different experience in funding, because you did a co-production with France and Belgium, and this is a model most of us are doing, because that's what the money is. Not easy to get as any money, but so it's a model that so I want to ask you, for example, what is the reality of a Rwandese filmmaker trying to raise money in co-production with with the two European countries? And we know, for example, that there's things like co-production agreements that countries have to sign. Therefore, we are limited that, for example, in Rwanda, because we don't have a co-production agreement between our government and the French government or the Belgian government, some things we can't access, even though we go through these channels. So I just want you to tell me a little bit, to share with us about how you was the experience of working with European co-producers, raising money, if there was any money that came from here. How was that experience? How does that collaboration between three countries?
Yeah, as also Kivu said, co-producing with other countries, it's also challenging, even to find the right person, the right producer, because even for the Mass of the Jungle, it took me, let's say, 5 years to 6 years. I met so many producers from all over, but we couldn't really match because I had my vision, I had my how I wanted to tell the story. But to really find the best producer, the best person who really understand my vision, it took time. But I was really happy to find a producer that really share the same ambition, but really who respect also my artistic vision. That's why always I'm part of the producing team, but also writing and directing. So for Rwandese on the co-production market, it's really it's not easy because you are on the table with zero investment. Yeah, you have your script, you have your ideas, but now that's why what now we have in Rwanda, we have an institution like Rwanda Film Office. Now, as they are thinking a lot about the future of the cinema, now it's really time to really, for example, sign the co-production treaties with those countries. Those it's just those signature a country and another country sign that really helps a lot. I can give you an example. If on the Mass of the Jungle, Belgium puts money on the table, they will say, yeah, we need some Belgian technician, an actor, which also challenged me. There's a moment I really want to use a Rwandese actor or a Rwandese technician, but because they invested money, then you are really blocked. But the moment there is just a co-production treaty between Rwanda, Belgium, or France, immediately it allows Rwandese actors, Rwandese technicians to work on those big projects like Petit Pays, and then get paid the same salary as European. Because at this moment when they come, they produce the movie, you will see the salary of Rwandese will always be. So those are the decisions that those institutions, Rwandese institutions, have to do to sign the co-production treaty that will really help us to negotiate very well on this co-production market. But also, once we have like a film fund, it will really help a lot, because once a country invests money on the project or facilities, then the producer, Rwandese producer, is negotiating the shares of the film goes higher. That's why sometimes you will see I co-produce international production, but also sometimes I make my small projects auto-produce, because sometimes I really want to just tell story. But on the other side, it's really necessary to, yeah, we have really to work with, this institution has really to react, because you can see Rwandese filmmakers, they're really on a high speed. So they're really on a high speed in all market, in all festival. So what we need is the institution really to decide and make the treaties, put really facilities that really can help this wave, as we've been saying, wave to really be sustainable. But on the other side, yeah, co-producing a film like The Master of the Jungle, it took really time. But I don't wish another filmmaker to go through the time and the years and the struggle. That's why we really have to collaborate and work with the institution and advise and help them to make the right decision for the future of this cinema.
Yes. So time is running very fast. I just want to. It would be interesting to go into details about these financial problems and financial obstacles we face. But there are other obstacles to shooting a film in Rwanda, which is not necessarily financial, because making film doesn't only require money; it requires accessing places, having a shooting permit, having the facilities to. To access. I can share one anecdote. Once I worked with a French crew, and they told me that they have shot in almost like every country in the world, and they haven't seen a country where it's difficult to shoot more than in Rwanda, because even from the people, how people are scared of the camera. Just like you put the camera, some people start running. This camera is like a gun. So, and for example, we have we've been having shooting permits in Rwanda with the HARC, which was issuing shooting permits. And I remember sometimes you go in the car, I was in the countryside and shooting and show them said, what is RARC? Nobody knows RARC. So in the end, we have a lot of problems facing. That's just one I just shared, but I'm sure each one of you has faced one thing or another that is not financial, that is not technical, just from the environment and how filmmaking is perceived in Rwanda. So I just wanted to do a quick round, just very brief, of everyone, like just to share his own experience or his own recommendation about other difficulties that are necessarily financial of shooting films in Rwanda. Maybe since we have the microphone, you can start quickly and you can.
Yeah, making a movie, each movie, it's really a battle. But for me, I remember when I started I had an idea, a project I want to produce and direct. It was a documentary, but the person who was in charge just to sign for, at that time, it was 2009, to sign for copyright. He was reading the project, but it took him like 6 months to decide at that time. But I think now it's quick. But at that moment, it's really destroyed my energy. That's why I'm happy now there is really the institution in charge of cinema, where I'm confident that I can send the script and then they will analyze and sit down and understand my vision. But in case they don't, it takes time, then it's really destroy your energy. So that's why they have really to, if a filmmaker comes with a project, we have really to react. It's not just about money, it's about those small decisions that really can motivate a filmmaker to move forward with the project.
I think like the biggest challenge is more like on a technical level to find a team only comprised like out of Rwandese technicians where you don't have to compromise the production value. To be honest, I think that's like, there's of course the whole like getting permits and stuff, but I haven't yet been confronted with it. But I always find it quite hard to find like a technical team where you don't have to kind of lower your creative ambitions in a way. And I think it's also part of, there's the whole creative aspect where I think we've got a lot of talent in that sense, but I think there needs to be a lot of money put into like a proper, everyone is self-taught at the end of the day. I mean, there are like schools now, but even in those schools, you can see that the level of there's just something that can be more, if it's more professionalized, it will kind of make the production value of films that are produced in Rwanda much, much better. And I think there's a big lack of like professionalized, education of technicians more than anything, actually. Because the stories are there anyway. The stories are there, and the other stuff you can teach yourself. But I think there's a bit of a production value level that can be that can go up if there's more money in that sector in a way. So I think that's
technical skills development.
Yeah.
Personally, I think, as you said it, the difficulties are nearly similar. I would have also anecdotes of shooting permits maybe before it was harder and get easier and easier and easier. But as well as some stories, as you said, it's hard to film some stories more than others. Some are more ambitious, or you have to, where you are and how. Guns. No, I'm saying how some projects you push them back because maybe you as a person don't have the necessary connections to bring it out, or you don't have you don't have access to the said institution, or I don't know. I think personally the challenges, or what I would say, is to find a common ground between the said institutions and the artists, because at the same time, maybe if you need someone to go through your script so that they decide whether to give you a shooting permit or not, at least they need to have that sensitivity of knowing, okay, maybe it's not right or wrong. There is there are whole layers of that. So yeah, to me, that's what I would say.
In my opinion, one of the biggest one of the biggest challenges is the producer. The producer is a key figure in our industry to raise the profile of films and to raise the prestige of the industry, because we suffer from a prejudice. Like, for example, if working in a documentary, for example, even when you've secured the permit, sometimes having access, for example, you could have a lousy director from say Belgium, who comes and then who gets the access that takes you months or that you could never dream of. And sometimes we want to make films, especially in documentaries, and then you need access to certain places, to certain people, to certain archives, and it becomes impossible. And sometimes you just say, this is going to take me forever, and then the success rate is very low, or the possibilities, it's just very unlikely sometimes. And yeah, so the producers who can raise the profiles and who can raise the prestige, and so that it becomes easier for us to deal with institutions sometimes. If I need to close off a street to shoot, for example, and if I have a producer who can negotiate with the police and the city of Kigali without us having to bleed financially, that's what raises the production values of a film. That all of a sudden a scene in my film is going to look like it costs a lot more than it did. Yeah, so producers who can bridge the gap between us, artists who are not always taken seriously, or who are always suspected of wanting to I don't know, to undress our characters, or to so there's and then we get a lot of clumsy pressure sometimes from officials or other high priests of morality on Twitter, and then they come and then they just like, why do you need to say this, and then make it even harder for an industry that's still trying to build itself. Yeah, so it's that kind of institutional support and a bridge between us, our community, and the institutions, and a sort of like a well-oiled machine where institutions do their job, officials don't necessarily try to get involved in things that where they don't necessarily need to be involved, and getting involved where they need to be involved. So it's that kind of but it will come with maturity. I mean, the more the industry matures, then the more people understand their rules, and things will get a lot smoother, I guess.
I hope. So time is, we're actually running out of time, but I want to I want to also talk about we talk about a lot of gaps or a lot of challenges you're having, like in terms of technical knowledge, financial knowledge, all these things. But I also have to say that there is a lot of efforts that are being done by filmmakers themselves to find solutions to their own problems. And for me, it's very important that we each of us here has participated in one of these efforts, and differently. And I want to also talk about this. About these efforts, for example, I was set with workshops. For example, we some of us evolved in the workshops. That's how we got our first knowledges, and these things are very important. For example, in Imitana Productions, as it was introduced before, we did a workshop last year, called beginning of this year, called Power and Constraints, where participants shoot 2 films, and we follow them in the phase of the distribution, all these things. But I know each one of you have done also, for example, I know the IGA Cinema, maybe you talk about this a little bit, the IGA Cinema initiative that you want to introduce. If you can talk about it a little bit. There's also a workshop, and Joel, you worked a lot with Maisha. And you can also tell us briefly about your involvement with Maisha, which is a workshop I did, Ganza did it, Philbert, many people did it in Rwanda. And Amelia, I know that you did the series, the workshop in Goma, Goma, that's the name, Tuko Goma. Of the web series, yes. Workshop, yes. So yes, we're gonna each one of us discuss about these initiatives. Why did you get involved in this? What is the hope outcome of it, and how is it necessary for today's cinema environment? How is it necessary for these initiatives by filmmakers to find? And also Ganza, you have a cine club, which is I think a very interesting initiative, also to not only make films but also watch films and attract people to have a taste in in cinema and different kind of cinemas. So I will maybe start with Ganza, and maybe each one of you talk about these initiatives and what was the experience? How do you see people responding to these things, and what were you hoping for it to change? Did it change anything, or did it advance anything? Changing is a big word, but did it spark, engage something that is in the line of finding our own solutions from the filmmakers' initiatives?
Yes, as I said, we started a collective 250 film experiment, and we are filmmakers trying to experiment with cinema and finding our own voices. But as I said, we each watched films to educate ourselves and help us reference, and we would talk a lot about them, and we realized that we need to have the seance where we sit, we watch a film that's curated by one of us and we discuss about it. And so that's how we started 250 film experiments in a club, as a means for us to watch films as filmmakers, but also the cinephile, to watch films and discuss about them, mostly independent films made by independent authors and people who we would deconstruct the film, try to understand their vision, try to understand their approach, and each talk about what we liked. And what we realized is, yes, we are watching films, but the audience or the people we are making films for, they also have only a shallow frame of reference. Like they watch a lot of maybe Hollywood, Nollywood, or Korean films. So, and we decided kind of like, yes, we're learning, but we also slowly want to start bridging the gap and try to curate more films by Rwandans or films by any independent filmmakers, but invite some people who are not filmmakers but interested to just try to have a common understanding. And as we learn from them, the comments they make and what they see, but we hope to grow it as I don't want to say culture, but as a thing where people not necessarily watch commercial films, but watch films that make them think a lot and try to, interact with the film better. So yeah, that's the initiative we started in 2018, and we have curated some filmmakers from here. You yourself, Philbert. We curated Baloji. We curated Kivu. He was generous to show us his second feature film. So yeah, we hope to grow it more and involve people more than just filmmakers, so that this culture of watching films that are not necessarily those ones you watch in Century Cinema or on Netflix, just to grow that visual literacy, because us also, it helps us to have an audience that is sharp, that will critique you, be like, no, this is not, I don't see that, like having return and actual conversation with people. So yeah, that's our participation, and we hope to grow. We've been growing and we hope to grow more, because usually most of the films we would watch them illegally, but the audience, the seance qu'on a with the audience, we have the director's approval, and most times they are there. So it's more and more open. Even if we watch the films, it's in the case, it's in the frame of education. So we don't charge people to watch the films. We just want to watch the films and discuss about them, and just have this thing where you have a small group of cinephiles that, yeah, people actually, even them, they can curate and bring something that we have not curated or they want to talk about. But yeah, that's the idea, and we hope to grow it more.
If you Tuko, Goma, all the other workshop that we did here on Goethe-Institut about film funding and distribution, or any other, I know that you did a workshop also. Did you do a workshop in Burkina Faso? On point, yes. All these initiatives that are also about skill sharing and, yes. What is your involvement? Why do you get involved? What is your motivation to get involved in these things, and how do you see its place in sparking something and advancing? What was the outcome of it?
Yeah, why it always kind of happened, either that I got approached, or that like the workshop we did 2 years ago, where we kind of put it together and then approached the institute. Yeah, I think it's a very, I think it's kind of also in the filmmakers or artists' duty to share their knowledge, and also as we said at the beginning, to demystify the process for a lot of other people as well. And so I did a workshop in Goma 3 years ago, and then also one in Waga, and I've been doing it I mean, we all do workshops because also that's also a way to kind of, keep working. And it, at least from the one in Goma, we had 3 films that came out of it that then went on to festivals, and those were films from people, first films from the participants, and a lot of the participants continue to work in cinema and are doing so quite successfully in their regions, be it here, be it in Goma, because it was a mix of Rwandese and Congolese participants, and almost all of them are still involved in filmmaking, be it the technical side or creative side. And I think it's very, since it's also I mean, I didn't go to film school, I didn't go through the formal film education. So I think it's a very valid way of actually getting people into the filmmaking, getting them interested, but also kind of of scouting talent as well. Because otherwise, I mean, if there's no film school, how are you going to know if people, So yeah, I think it's a very, it's a thing that, you have to do, but also in our region, it's also the only way to actually scout talent and kind of develop people's talent in a way.
You can talk. There's some workshops you organized. I remember at the Goethe-Institut, even before Maisha, that we all attended. Even very important for us. I have to say, for example, when you're studying, you don't even know how to write a script. Where do I put the scene description? Where do I put the dialogue? So all these initiatives that you were doing back then in 2010, but also later get involved with Maisha. What pushed you to do this? Same question. What pushed you? How do you judge it important to do these things, and what kind of outcome do you see from it? And do you think it's something that we should keep doing?
Yes, we have to keep doing it, because even for me to become a filmmaker, I had to attend a workshop for free, because filmmakers were ready to share their skills. And from the first day I made my short film, I knew back home in Rwanda we have really to share knowledge we have. So at that time I had to collaborate a lot with Goethe-Institut. So we organized so many workshops. We invited many filmmakers, Rwandese filmmakers, to really share their skills. At that time, we produced also with Maisha and Goethe-Institut some short film. And then, it was each year we could do workshop in Rwanda and Uganda, but always keep sharing whatever we have. skills we gained in the circuit of festival, and then what is special, as I said, Rwandese filmmakers, they always like to exchange skills. For example, when I meet Kivu, always we talk about cinema, we talk about our project. So always we share what we have. So there is no, ego fight, and that's what we have as a force here in Rwanda. And then in 2015, we created the Mashariki with Trezor Senga and other filmmaker here. But the aim was with Mashariki was to use the festival and also train more filmmaker, produce short film. So yeah, when we made that festival, it really boosts a lot. I can say the visibility of what we are doing and bringing in film, that African film. So it was really a process of sharing. And then after I had to focus on my feature, The Master of the Jungle. But now in Rwamagana, I'm constructing a residence. So it's a film residence that I will be able to at least each 6 months to host 9 filmmakers to come and spend 6 months and work on their script, try to bring in experts like Kivu and others, all of you, to really discuss with the participants and make sure that those projects, they are produced. And writing is not an easy process. It really takes time, it takes energy. So I will fight and get partners on the project that will be able even to, they have to eat, of course. Maybe they will have a per diem. So it's a project that if everything goes well, next year we'll start the first edition. So, but for me, I know I worked with festivals and other events, but I'm sure Rwanda, we need to really put force in development, because now at this moment, people, they think of marketing, but when you don't have content, what are you going to sell? So for me, I'm sure that we have really to invest all energy in development. Once we have great project, we have equipment here, we have people ready to work. So then we'll keep producing great movies.
Yeah, thank you very much. Kivu, I want to ask you also about Iga Cinema, which is a new initiative that you conceptualized, and I just want to know how it came about, why are you doing it, and what is the future for it in this kind of initiative?
Well, the project Iga Cinema is it's basically me and my current work partner Dida from EUG, formalizing something that I had been doing for years. Because in 2009, I think 2 months before I shot my first feature, I went to a workshop and instantly regretted it, like first day, because the mentors, they were just so far from me, from my experience. Even the language was a bit of an issue. So after my first feature film had a little bit of success, I started working as a mentor for Maisha as well, and then I did a workshop with Almond Tree Films, a company a defunct company that was called Almond Tree Films. I think you participated, yeah. And it was an intense kind of workshop, as I like them, like really going through like the whole process, and me kind of sharing my skills, but by sharing them with keeping in mind that we come from different types of realities. Yeah, so the Iga Cinema comes from that kind of like it's like a moral obligation, a little bit, as in as Amelia said, it's a moral obligation because we have the duty to share. I know that it can sound like maybe naive, but this national effort of kwigira, self-reliance, I strongly believe in, as in it is our duty and our moral obligation to kind of like support each other to try and raise the industry, and then so in 2008, at some point I was trying to do things with Safari, but I always realized that if Safari is not around, I am having difficulty finding somebody who's up to his standards. Yeah, so it's either Safari or Bosco, and then that's it. So we have that kind of dependency on sound recorders. Yeah. So we have that kind of we depend on a very few individuals who can do things for us. And it's just not it's not smart. And but also I've seen the incredible results that can come from a workshop that's well organized, and that's organized by people from here or Kenya or Uganda, mentors that the mentees can relate to and easily kind of pursue and follow up on the discussion over several months, because it can be a workshop of 10 days or 14 days. But the fact that you here and you're available, and then that kind of informal mentorship can continue over several months. I've seen the results that it can have in our community. From 2012, there are few people who came and to our workshops. Somebody like Shakur, I think he showed one of your documentaries. Yeah, but he came to our workshops as an editor, and now he has a company, employs 5 people. He has a drone license. He sells footage abroad. So he has gone beyond the confines of artistic cinema, and he's an entrepreneur. So there are many of those examples of people who came to our workshops and who have been able to live their passions and then and live decent lives and be and thrive economically. So I think I want Iga Cinema to become an annual kind of deep, intensive workshop. But that is focused on advanced participants. So we unfortunately we're not doing beginners at the moment. We want to take people who have a proven track record of being consistent and ambitious. So we went through all these applications and looked and carefully selected people who had who are ready to take their work in different departments to another level. And it's all really kind of sharing our skills, because I'm starting to become a fossil. I've been around for quite some time, so I think I have 1 or 2 things to share.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot to discuss. Some questions I have to skip them because unfortunately the time doesn't allow it, and with this confinement times we have to curfew rules, we have to stop at some point. And yes, I just want to thank you, everyone. And unfortunately, we didn't go through everything we had to go through. This is a long discussion. Each one has his own inputs and his own experiences to share and to reflect and to recommend things what can be done, and hopefully something we can do again sometimes, and to even continue this discussion. And thank you, Goethe-Institut, for being part of this, and CINIDB and GIZ and RDB for facilitating this, to be able just for us to have a conversation and share what's going on, and later see what can be done about it, and what can be what recommendations can come from that. So I don't know, Nadine, if you want to close this, but yes.
Yes, thank you. With great pleasure. Thank you so much. I think the attentiveness of the audience showed how interesting that was. Everybody was listening, even if it was quite a time. Thank you so much for facilitating that, for really inviting this wonderful panel. And thank you all for being here and making time on a Sunday afternoon. I think that I learned a lot, and I think the live stream also worked. I checked on YouTube in the meantime, it worked pretty well. So I'm happy about this as well. So there are people outside this room who also saw you talking and listened to you, and it will be online. It will be there on YouTube, so people can still watch it later and come back to that. And maybe this roundtable is a reference point later in the next month or in the next years. Who knows? Thank you all. And please enjoy our small catering and socialize, or I don't know, whatever you feel like. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I thanked everyone, but I didn't thank you guys for coming. It was amazing. So the rest we can discuss after, I guess.